Hi, today I will teach you the astrology behind the astrological ages, and you'll see how they're entwined into the whole history of humanity and into all spirituality, religion, and the biggest current spiritual and cultural trends that are happening. And you see that astrology is actually the underlining energy, the underlying force behind any historical changes in the world. Let's see, and then we'll talk about the age of Aquarius and what it means, and the past ages before Aquarius, what they meant, and let's see how we define astrological ages. Basically, imagine that this is the horizon, and this is the sun rising on the horizon on the first day of spring, which is normally around the 21st of March. This is when the day and the night are equal. And this is basically people in the ancient past, they started watching and they would see that every year when the beginning of the new year starts, the new year throughout history has always begun with the first day of spring, with the beginning of new life in the northern hemisphere. And only recently it has been changed from December, from the 1st of January, but it has always been from the first day of spring when the spring equinox happens. And ancients started noticing that when the sun rises every year on the same day, exactly at the same spot, the backdrop of the stars behind it are changing. Every 2000, approximately 160 years, one different constellation will change. For example, what happened exactly in the year 0 BC, approximately 0, no, actually it's not BC, it's 0 AEC, after Christ. What happened is then when the sun was rising on that day, the constellation of Aries was behind it, basically the star of Aries. Imagine, there are constellations, and this is not how we do astrology, psychological and character astrology. We use the signs which have the same name, but they imprinted on Earth. But the constellations, they show the big eras, the big chunks of time, the big epochs of astrology, the big epochs of history in humanity. And from the year, approximately the year 0 before Christ, till before 2,000 years before that, the sun was always rising on the 1st of March at the backdrop of the sign Aries. It's not the sign, of the constellation Aries. So whenever people on the first day of spring, they would look, the sun would be rising exactly where Aries was rising, and it was called that this was the age of Aries, age of Aries. And all the historical epoch during that time was kind of influenced by the energy of Aries. And Aries energy is very logical. Logic was developed throughout humanity during this period. Aries is a very masculine energy. A lot of wars were happening. Aries is the sign of the warrior, and this is when the Roman and the Greek empires were rising. They were very prevalent during those 2,000 years of the age of Aries. So actually the power of the strong one came into the world. Before that it was not so. Humanity was not as vicious, interestingly enough. Age of Aries, we became warriors, and the male patriarchy, the rule of the jungle, the stronger rules. And you know how the ancient Rome, and it was the rule of the strong that survives, the rule of the jungle, and also how the cult towards the physical body was built during that time, and Aries rules the muscular system and the physical body. And this was the time when you see in a lot of ancient temples rams, and all the temples built around the period of the Aries, the age of Aries, there were temples with a lot of rams in them. And you know what? Also Christ, who appeared at the end of the age of Aries, was the Lamb of God. Was the lamb which was sacrificed, it was slain. It symbolized the ending of the age of Aries. Christ was born exactly between two ages. When Aries finished and when Pisces started, This is what Pisces is, you know. And from around 0 AD, was it AD? Yes, around 0 AD. This is the constellation that started rising behind the sun on the first day of spring was Pisces already, and it still continues to be till this day, or you know, the year 2000 after AD. And we're still in the age of Pisces, actually. And Christ, the coming of the Christ, or if you don't believe in Christ, it's the mythology, the era that brought the religion of Christianity, ended with the slaying of the lamb as a sacrifice of the old age finishing and the new age of Pisces coming. And do you know how early Christians and nowadays Christians, what signs they were giving to each other to recognize each other? Well, it was the sign of the Pisces, the sign of the fish, and Christians are known as the fishes of God. So this is still nowadays you would see the sign of the fish on evangelists or people who believe in, you know, Christians. They put it on their cars, but this is the secret symbol of Christians when they first, you know, when Christianity first came. And also the hat of the Pope has the same shape of a fish, you know, because this is during the last 2,000 years, the qualities of Pisces were exuding behind the sunrise on the first day of spring. And actually the sun activates these on the first day of spring, whatever constellation is passing behind the sun, not only indicates this age, the big historical age, but it sends very strong impulses that come to us for the birth of each new year, and the birth of each new year is stimulated for about 2160 years through the energy of Pisces. And Pisces wanted to bring to us, you know, all the Christian principles, which are Piscean principles of turning the other cheek, of forgiveness, of blind faith without having reason and logic to believe. As you know, a lot of Christianity, there was people were not mature and grown up enough for them to be explained the scientific reasons behind spirituality. So everything was given like a myth, and you were told you have to believe it and faith would work through you. So the principles of faith had to develop, which is Pisces principles of forgiveness, of loving the others. Pisces is the sign of love, of giving of yourself, of sacrifice, and this is what we still haven't fully acquired, even half of those qualities, because often, even when one certain age finishes, it continues to run. It continues for about towards the middle of the other age. Two ages run parallel to each other. Speaking, the energy that was generated in the consciousness of humans runs into at the same time with the beginning of the new age, exactly like the more aggressive martial energy, the rule of the strong surviving and winning, did not finish by the year 0. You know, we were still very aggressive and angry. The energies of people, there are a lot of people with the consciousness still set in the still influenced by the energy of the age of Aries, and a lot of belligerent, aggressive, angry people still around, you know. And they're running parallel with more and more awakening people who are awakening to the influences of the Pisces energy for the past 2,000 years of compassion, sacrifice, which were almost unheard of before. Those principles of giving to others, of charity, of love, of sacrifice and faith, blind faith, you know. And these processes, we still have to acquire them, even though from the year approximately 2300 AD, the sun will be rising at the backdrop of the constellation of Aquarius. We're still not fully into the age of Aquarius. We're feeling already its influences, because you know, the constellations, they do not stop like that. The constellation of Aquarius is a bit intercepted with the constellation of Pisces. These are not like the signs. One sign finishes here, one starts here. They're the constellations in the sky. They're kind of, you know, stepping on each other. So we're still part into the Pisces energy, field of the Pisces energy, and we'll fully go into the Aquarius energy from 2300, 400. It's not exactly pure when from this era, but already a lot of people are awakening to the Aquarius energy. And Aquarius is the sign of brotherhood, equality, and society working as one. And this is what we'll be developing for 2,000 years ahead, 2,100 years ahead to perfection. Actually, the principles of Pisces would still continue running simultaneously. We'll still have to adopt them and make them blossom throughout the age of Aquarius, because we haven't fully developed them. Now the impulse has been sent for the past 2,000 years, but we have to fully develop it even throughout the age of Aquarius. And in the age of Aquarius, the impulse of Aquarius will be coming to us. And as I said, it's implementing equality between everyone, whether it's sexes or whether it's rights for every person. It's also society becoming, everyone contributing to society. These are the principles of Aquarius, that everyone is equal and equally important in the machine of society, and everyone should find their individuality there and intrinsic worth and value within society. And by the end of the age of Aquarius, a lot of us would have, most of us would have, would feel like deserving members of society, and society will be peaceful. It will be like this utopic society, because Aquarius is a sign of utopism, is a sign of perfect utopic society that works fantastically. It's like in perfect order. Every part knows its integral role and what it has to do. And Aquarius is, as I said, it's rights of people, is everyone actually not pulling the rug towards themselves, but everyone wanting to contribute to society and to the well-being of others. These are energies of Aquarius that we'll be implementing. Aquarius is also the sign of science. So science will continue to develop, but actually the science will not be as the destructive. Usually the first part, the beginning of a big new age, the signals and the impulses sent from the sign, from the constellation, are kind of distorted and mixed. And we started feeling the energy of Aquarius for the past 100 years already, 100, 200 years. And it will fully come, as I said, by 2300. But the first impulses are a bit twisted, so the scientific knowledge that is coming, it has a bit lower, not the pure vibration of Aquarius, so it can be used for selfish purposes. But it will no longer be so further we go into Aquarius, because it will have to benefit everyone, not for distraction, but for actually for the upliftment of spirituality and well-being of others in society. Aquarius also rules energy. Energy sources, electricity or prana, will be discovering newer and newer energy sources. And however much the masters of the world right now are trying to suppress those new technologies, which will be starting to be discovered, soon they will no longer be able to, because just the current of time, the energy of the inspiration behind the cosmos, the big consciousness of God, or whatever you want to call it, it will, this current is so powerful, these new technologies and these new sources of energy will no longer be suppressed. So they can resist as much as they want for now, but very soon this will, very soon it will just be unleashed, this, and everyone will have inexhaustible source of energy, and when there is energy, there is knowledge. There is when everyone has source of energy, this is when wars will also stop, because people will not be fighting over resources, because energy will make resources accessible to everyone. So this is what we're to expect during the age of Aquarius. More scientific advance, but aimed at the raising and upliftment and uplifting of everyone rather than selfishly. And let's go a little bit back to the past. Oh, also, Aquarius is the sign of when people can talk from mind to mind without actually using words. What was that word? Telepathy. Aquarius rules telepathy, so more and more people throughout the age of Aquarius in the next 2,000, 2,300 years will be born with abilities to have telepathy between each other. Already many children, the so-called indigo children, children with aura that has indigo colors, and indigo color is the color of Aquarius. Is the color of the planet Uranus, so they have the third eye, which is much more stimulated, and they can have those special abilities to see into the future, power to communicate without, telepathy, to communicate through telepathy. And as we said, other sources of energy will be discovered that we're not even able to dream of right now. And let's go a little bit into the past. Let's see what were the ages before that, very quickly. Because before, let's just a second. Before the age of Aries, let's say this is the age of Aries, 0 AD. This was, let's say, 200, 1000 BC. This was the age of Aquarius. The constellation of Aquarius was rising at the backdrop of the sun on the first day of spring. And why do we choose the first day of spring? This is when something is activated within the earth. It's very esoteric, it's very philosophical. Maybe it's too complex to explain to you why. But the sun works as a lens through which the cosmic influences hit the earth and influences for the whole year ahead. And just like it's like a birth, the birth of each new year, just like a person has a personal birthday, the personal birthday of the earth every year is when the sun, on the first day of spring, on the 21st of March. This is which defines that first day of this birthday defines what the year ahead will be. So the planetary constellationary influences of the sun during this period will affect the whole year ahead. And for about 2,100 years, the sun is brings the spiritual influences and inspirations of Aries. And as I said, a lot of very more aggressive culture, masculine culture came during the age of Aries. And it had its own point to develop independence of thinking and strength in humanity. But before that was the age of Taurus. And Taurian qualities are very much about the earth, about settling down. This is when society, and not society, I don't think it was, well, humanity actually was settling more and more from nomadic living around into more settlement, and the developing agriculture, because Taurus rules agriculture. As well, women were more in respect during this period of Taurus, because Taurus is a feminine sign, and you would actually, when you go back to history, the years around 4,000, I think approximately 4,200 BC to about 2,100 BC, approximately. It's not like a line like that. As we said, they intertwine and flow into each other. This is when women had more power, and women actually, even in ancient Egypt, this is during this period of the Egyptian empire. This is when women could own land, and actually the women were the one who owned the land, not the men. And in ancient Egyptian art, you would see that the pharaoh, the queen, has her hand around the male, which is a sign of propriety. Possession. So basically the man was the possession of the woman, and woman had, if not more, at least equal power to men. And also, if you go back, approximately temples built around this period, maybe a few hundred years before, a few hundred years after, you'll see that actually there were a lot of bulls and images of bulls and of cows. Actually, still nowadays in India, there is remnants of that of those religions developed during the age of Taurus, and there is the cow is still divine there. The cow is still considered a holy, sacred animal, and it's a throwback to this age of Taurus. Before the age of Taurus, let's say for about 6,400 before Christ to about 4,200 before Christ, it's never too, I said never like that, was the age of Gemini. And this is when the written word was coming from pictographic writing. It went into the more, ABC type of writing. This was when the alphabet was integrated into humanity, was sent as a spiritual impulse down from the stars. This is when writing and books, all those kind of things came as well. Also, this is when the Gemini, the sign of Gemini is of two polar opposites, one male, one female, one black, one white. This is the two pillars of Gemini. They symbolize opposition and two very diverse things. And this is when, during this period, the fire religions of Persia were given. This is when the ancient Persian cultures were developing, and in Afghanistan, Iraq, all these areas, and they were actually given to Zarathustra. I don't know if you know some ancient history, but I think that Zarathustra, that's the name, and he received the religion, a fire which said that there is good and there is evil, and the forces of evil are fighting the forces of light, fighting the forces of darkness. And this is when the dual religion came of good and evil. This was for the first time given this impulse to humanity, and for about 2,000 years, this religion was taking over all the civilized world. And this is where the understanding of black and white, good and bad came, and the dark forces, light forces. These are the religions of fire. And before that, from around 8,000 and something, let's say 500, to around 6,400, never so set, was the age of Cancer. That's far, far into the past. This was matriarchy for sure. Cancer is the sign of the mother. This is when women ruled. Women had the power. And people think that this is when, history will tell you, this is when we were fighting with mammoths, and women were used as exchange for, almost for food. But it's not true, actually, in civilized society. And there were such. I keep repeating, history is not what is in the history books, and there are reasons for it to be hidden, but soon all the truth will come, because in the age of Aquarius, truth comes out, scientifically proven as well. We'll no longer blindly believe what the age of Pisces could pull the wool in front of our eyes, because Pisces is the sign also of lying, of being in a fog, being confused. Pisces is a sign of, is very watery, there is confusion, and for the past 2,000 years we lost a lot of sacred knowledge, and we had to blindly believe what we're told. And you can be very deceived and illusioned and manipulated as the rulers of the world want during Pisces ages, during this Piscean age, because of the delusion that is inherent in the influence of Pisces. But when Aquarius comes, and it's coming, more and more truth, you're feeling it, more and more truth about the past of humanity, about the truth about the future, about the truth of ancient spirituality, and how it's strongly connected to science. Scientifically, more and more spirituality will be, the invisible worlds will be proven through scientific means. But yes, we were talking about the age of Cancer, which was around approximately this period before Christ, when women were powerful. Women, it was matriarchy. They were the ones respected. Cancer is a sign of motherhood, and this is when the figurines. There are a lot of figurines all over the world, from different places, from one end of the world to the other, where there are figurine of, well, I might not draw it properly, but of pregnant women, quite hefty, with quite fat women. That, something like that. You'll see it everywhere around the world, around these ages. These figurines were coming because the woman that bears fruit was then the religions of female deities were given, and the woman had the power during those ages. And I think this was the age of the Ancient Vedas, where in India was developed a civilization as well during the age of Cancer. But I don't have knowledge about so far into the past. But anyway, I hope there was also the age of Leo before that, which was golden age of humanity. This was basically when, after the age of Leo, things started going a bit down for humanity, till the age of Aquarius, when things start going up again, because there is an evolutionary wave for humanity. There is always, consciousness is lost on the involution down, and consciousness is gained, more understanding and more abilities to understand and to utilize nature and forces of power and everything around you. And we started on the upturn, on the rise up, on the upturn and we'll gain consciousness more and more into the age of Aquarius. But we started losing it from the age of Leo, when a lot of human beings were very enlightened. This was the age of Atlantis as well. This is when the civilization of Atlantis started declining, and I think that around the age of Leo, it was when it was basically submerged. But anyway, this is a topic of another discussion. I hope I was able to explain to you what the age of Aquarius is, what the other ages is, and please, you're welcome to give your opinions as well.